amazing that we all I did that way before that recording hit, but hey. So, hey everyone, I'm Lily Ellen Duenas, and I'm excited that we're here in this space together. Ambies submissions, the early bird pricing ends on the 15th, but the submissions still roll for a while longer. So, even if you can't get all of this amazing advice actioned in the next 3 days, that's okay. Ambies is still open, and you can submit at any time before the deadline. So my name, as I mentioned, Lily, and my pronouns she, her. I'm founder of the Wild Yoga Tribe and host of the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. I'm an indie podcaster calling in from Des Moines, and this week's a huge week for me. It's the 100th episode of my podcast. So far, I've interviewed 100 yoga teachers from 100 countries. So I'm very excited to celebrate that with this community and coming together and learning from each other. I also serve on the TPA board committee as their chair of the Outreach and Education Committee. So I would love to introduce our amazing panelists. Today we have Bethany Hawkins at the helm. She is the CEO and founder of Crackers and Soup. She has worked on over 80 podcasts, from creating cover art all the way to helping women create their podcast vision through launches, podcast management, and consultations. The podcast she's worked on has had a ton of awards, have won a ton of awards, but also have had over 3 million listeners. And one of them was even featured in a Princeton course, which I think is quite the accomplishment. So go ahead and give like an applause to Stephanie using emoji. Those are always fun. All right, up next, I'm going to introduce Dominic Lawson. So Dominic is a 14 times, yes, I said that, 14 times award-winning podcaster. So if someone, Bethany, Dominic, Anna, we're all in this room, but like, whoa, all these awards are so amazing. Great, congrats to Dominic. Yes, love the applause. Thanks for using emojis. So his podcast is Black is America. And he also serves as the host, editor, and producer of podcasts for Meadows Behavioral Health Care. So if you want to check out Black is America or any of the podcasts that he works on, that's the way to do it. I'm sure he'll drop his information here in the chat too. All right, Anna. So Anna is a multi-award winner as well. She didn't give me a number, so I can't share a number. That's some humble stuff right there. But she also, she's not humble, or just whatever, we're saying that. Including an Ambie Award. So this is very timely. Bethany's also served as a judge. So sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. So she can give the behind the scenes. So Anna won an Ambie. She's a Chicago-born social entrepreneur who builds streaming platforms which center and celebrate BIPOC and QTPOC creatives. She also is the founder of E3 Radio, which is an online radio station playing queer music and reporting on queer news with an intersectional lens. She's also co-founded The Cube, and that's spelled Qube, which is a podcast production company. So anyway, we have amazing resources, amazing humans. We're coming together, dropping some knowledge. I'm gonna let Bethany kick it off with the first question for our panelists. And also, y'all, I just wanna mention, if you have questions, drop them in the queue or drop them in the chat, and we're gonna be paying attention to that, and we'll try to answer things live versus typing answers into chat. Just keep that in mind. We'll try to get to all the questions that are dropped in there. All right, Bethany, take it away.
Thank you, Lily, for that beautiful introduction. And you called me Stephanie. I'm going to go call you out on it because my name is Bethany with a B. It's okay. It's okay. But, you know, it wouldn't be me if I didn't call you out on it.
How did that happen? Did I call you Bethany or Stephanie once or twice?
Just once. Just once.
Okay, well, if anyone finds that out, that I do that wrong one more time, I owe you like a postcard and a $5 Starbucks gift card. So
I'll answer to anything.
If you find it.
Anything that ends with an E. Tiffany, whatevs. So I am so excited to be here. When Lily reached out to me and said, hey, how are we going to collaborate and do something for TPA? I was like, look, it is award season, and I have been listening to so many podcasts who have submitted for awards. Let's talk about that. That is relevant and that is important. And here we are. So because I could just yammer on and on and on, and everybody would get bored, I decided to suck in two of my podcasting peeps, Dominic and Anna. And poor Anna was on vacation celebrating all of these things, and I am all in her DM. Ma'am, will you please do this with me? And Dominic's wife is having a birthday today. And I was like, but Dominic, it's the TPAs. Let's chat about this. And they so graciously said yes. So thank you both. I'm humbled, I'm honored, and I am just a better person just for knowing you. So, Dominic, let me ask you first. Lily threw down the 14 number. Name just a few of the awards that you have won for your podcast.
Sure. So again, Lily, Bethany, thank you so much for having me, and it's always awesome to share space with Anna Deshawn. So basically, we launched Black is America and back in 2021, and we knew what we wanted to do with the show, and we always knew we wanted to launch it for award season, if you will, right? And so a few of the awards that we won, one includes a W3 award where we got Best in Show for an episode that we wrote about Wendell Scott. So that was an awesome episode. And also there was one for John Fox, who gave us an award for, best nonfiction narrative podcast for the communicators as well. And then another award that we got for Tom Lee was a Webby. We were able to come home with a Webby for that episode. And so Black is America itself has 10 separate awards for everything that we've done with it. And in addition to that, for my work for Meadows Behavioral Healthcare, just to kind of give you a little bit of background on it. So it's one of the leading behavioral healthcare companies in the country. And so we focus on people going through addiction, trauma, and coming throughout on the other side through recovery and stuff like that. And so we've been able and fortunate to win a few awards with our show Recovery Replay, where we really go through a person's story of recovery, won a few awards with that, and our show Beyond Theory. And Beyond Theory really takes a Law and Order ripped from the headlines type of style of talking about behavioral health and mental health in the world, and talking about that stuff with world-class clinicians. And so we were able and fortunate to come away with an award for our episode about racial trauma within the Black community. And so it was a very powerful episode where we pulled in two incredible Black clinicians from around the country, and was able to give that feedback as well. And I think that goes, to really, for award season, in the sense that, having those credible voices and bringing in different voices and different perspectives kind of rounds you out a little bit when it comes to award season. So we've had a little bit of success with awards and things of that nature for sure.
I love that. And I love the fact that this is why I love podcasting, because you get so much information that is so pivotal to so many different groups that even if you aren't somebody who is BIPOC, brown, Black, or associate with somebody who is of that marginalized group, you can still have the opportunity to listen and to learn and to acquire that knowledge and take that out with you. And that's why podcasting is so important. And that's why honoring podcasts via awards is so important as well, to introduce new audiences to the podcasts that are just doing amazing. Anna, same question. You have done all of the awards. You've gotten all the awards. So I had to do a little bit of research. The person who got the most awards, of all time, is Walt Disney. I think Dominic and Anna pretty much has him beat. R.I.P. Walt Disney, you're done. Anna, what awards have some of the awards that you've received for your podcast?
For sure. Good to be here. Always good to talk with TPA. What's going on, podcasters? So I won 3 Black Podcasting Awards last year for our Queer News podcast. And won an award for our Bring Brittany Home series. Brittany Griner was a huge story for us last year, and it really garnered a lot of listenership and really solidified the need for queer news out here in the world. And it was really beautiful to win for that series. And then recently we won 2 communicator awards for our first Cube original that we dropped called Black HIV in the South. So we won for a particular episode, and then we won for a limited series, which was really beautiful because it was our first Cube original that we produced. And it was a project that came out of a story from queer news. Everything is connected here. And I feel like it's an evergreen piece that I hope is really helpful in understanding why HIV is still very much so a pandemic in the South in regards to Black folks. And telling that story was really important. And we won an Ambie, which was wild. earlier this year for Queer News in the new DIY category. So that was pretty dope. Something I had never thought about. Dominic, like, I'm going after award season. I was like, I didn't even know I could do it. Okay. So I'm trying to be like Dominic. And if you have never heard Black is America, definitely go listen. It's a beautiful pod.
So I love that you two both stated so many different podcasts that so many different awards that you won for so many different podcasts, because I think podcasting styles are very important when you're submitting your reels for an award, because some are narrative style, some are storytelling. I know that Queers News, Anna, is a very short news oriented podcast. It's under 10 minutes long. So when you are choosing what soundbite to create a reel to submit to a particular podcast award, how are you choosing those sound bites to incorporate for submission?
I choose the sound bites that I get the most feedback on. I mean, y'all know this is not rocket science, right? We're talking about this, but I hope that y'all have more questions than us just talking, because y'all are like, everybody in TPA is really brilliant at what they do. So you already know audience feedback is everything. So when listeners tell me like this episode impacted them, or oh, I really enjoyed that, those are the things that stick with me, and those are the things I want to amplify. So our first reel we ever did, it was a lot about Brittany Griner. It was and it was like our major story. So it was Brittany Griner. It was a trans sister here in Chicago that I knew who was murdered here. She was a huge story, an important story for us to want to amplify. And then just telling the story about who Queer News is in this reel. And then getting it produced so that it sounds amazing is so incredibly important. So that's how I choose what actually goes into these reels.
Dominic, how do you choose which?
Can we break it down 1 second? How long is a reel, and like how much do you balance it out, just like trying to explain what your podcast is versus pulling bites?
So as a judge, I'd like to answer this question. The reel should be, however, 1 second shorter than the submission allows. So if the submission is allowing 5 minutes for your reel, it should be 4 minutes and 59 seconds. It should not exceed 5 minutes, and it shouldn't be 93 seconds. And the reason why that is because we as a judge are not going out and listening to your podcast. That reel is literally all we are listening to. And I think that there is a misunderstanding that because information is linked to your podcast, that we're just going to go jump in. Ain't nobody got time for that. We have to, Dominic and Anna know, we have all been judges for award shows. We literally have hundreds and hundreds of reels that we're listening to. What we get, and we don't get upset. So if you're not putting your best foot forward in making sure that the sound bites transition seamlessly, making sure that the sound bites are grabbing the attention, the reel should comprise of first an introduction to who you are. What is a really beautiful thing about a reel is if it is specified to that particular award show. So if you're submitting a reel for the Podcast Academy, in the very beginning, hi, I'm Bethany Hawkins. My podcast is Chatting Over Chowder, and I'm so excited to be submitting my reel to the Podcast Award Show for comedy. What? The Ambies? You're talking specifically to the Ambies? You already get like 2 check pluses and a high five for that. Then you should have your sound bites with some transition music. Then at the end, say thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to listen to my reel. I hope that you enjoyed it because we enjoyed creating it for you. Mind blown. Just saying who you are, introducing your podcast, what your podcast is about, selecting those particular sound bites that Anna said that got engagement, having some transition music, and then having a thank you. You will stand out in front of so many people. Out of the people. Dominic, how did you choose your sound bites? And I know that you have done a lot of judging with me. We have DMs for days. Right. Do you care to just jump in on any of that?
Oh, for sure. And I love the piece that like you talked about how like make sure that the reel is like 1 second shorter than the actual, submission length eligibility part, but also making it long enough because we want to hear that breadth and that depth, of the show, because there's been plenty of times where a reel has been too short, like, oh, I know there's more there. I do want to just go and look at the website, but I'm not supposed to because I'm supposed to judge what's here. Right. So those little things that you talked about, also doing that introduction and actually talking to the judge, that's critical. That really will. It's just fun. It was the thing. Occam's razor is the small things. It really is just the small things that really can help you stand out. And speaking of, what pieces of my show that I submit in the reel is kind of a lot like what Anna Deshawn was saying earlier. And by the way, Black HIV in the South is a phenomenal show. Definitely go check that out. Definitely is a great listen. But what I do for our shows is I listen to what people say as far as like that feedback, but also I'm thinking about like what's going to impact the judge. For example, when we submitted our show for Tom Lee's, just to get a little bit of background, Tom Lee was a hero here in Memphis who saved 32 people from a boat that was capsizing, right? And so one of the pieces in the reels that I put in there was literally the sound of the boat capsizing, like going underwater, like and even being a little bit graphic, you can hear some of the screams of people being trapped inside the boat. Like I'm trying to pull you in, and try to pull the judge in into feeling what the audience is feeling. Or with John Fox, who heroically called military fire on himself from a tower. I'm trying to put you in that tower. I'm trying to make you think about like, what was John Fox thinking at that moment? Was his heart beating slowly or fast or whatever? I'm like doom 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 doom. So I'm literally trying to put you there in that situation. And so if my audience is feeling that, the judge is going to feel that. And so I'm trying to find those impactful moments to make sure that I get over to the judge, what I want them to feel. So hope that helps.
And I know that you have a narrative style podcast, Dominic, but Anna has interview style podcasts. So even an interview style podcast, you should have this kind of a recipe in order to submit for a reel. And how you go about doing that is you have the clips that, as Anna said, your audience relates to. You that makes you laugh, or that makes you feel just overwhelmed with, wow, I totally relate to that. Sometimes we go back and we listen to what we created in a podcast and we're like, that was amazing. I am a genius. That's what you want to submit. Because if it's going to make you go, oh, don't put that as one of the sound bites in the reel. You want to evoke feeling, no matter what that feeling is, whether it be a narrative style or whether it be an interview style or if it's a storytelling. We've had people submit stories, and there should be an understanding of who the characters are. So if you have a story podcast, don't just slap it smack dab in the middle and upload it, because I have no idea who these people are. You have to give people a Reader's Digest version and make them want to listen to your podcast. And fun fact, we actually write commentary on these submissions on why they were either amazing, or I like to do constructive criticism. And it could be something as simple as the luffs are way too loud. If it is breaking my eardrums trying to listen to 5 minutes of your audio, that is a problem. Or if it is so soft that I have to jack up the volume, that is a problem. So it's not only just finding the pieces to create this beautiful reel, but it's also the little things like audio. So let's talk about categories. How do you decide which category to submit your podcast in, Dominic?
So that's a great question, and I'm actually glad Shrikant is in the audience here in the Zoom, because he's one of my TPA mentors this session for TPA. So shout out to Shrikant for that. But one of the things I do with a mentor, whether it be like a Shrikant or Crystal Hill over at Black Love, we look at our show and we go through the categories and see what fits, right? Because I think a lot of times, when we submit for awards, at least initially, We think we think we like, yeah, this should go for podcast of the year, and this should be awesome, and I should fit this category. And you get a mentor like, whoa, let's pump the brakes here. So going through those submissions and those categories with the mentor, I highly advise. And seeing as that I do history and I also do mental health and behavioral health, that's very important, right? Because just because I feel like, yeah, it's good for the mental health, piece or category, but okay, well, maybe it also kind of fits in documentary style because we are going through a person's journey and stuff like that. So I think it's important, if I can give one caveat, go through those categories with a mentor, and not just looking at those by yourself.
Anna, how do you decide which categories you should submit your reels to?
Yeah, it's tough because I got a lot of identities and my pod can fit into a lot of different categories. I'd be like, is this the best news podcast? Is it the best LGBTQ podcast? Is it the best new podcast? I don't know what it is today. How about all of them? But who got money for that? And budgets, okay? So for the Ambies in particular, Crystal actually helped me as well. So big ups to Crystal. She ain't in here, but she here, okay? Because when I looked at the categories for queer news, I was like, man, this could be best indie pod, right? And she was like, it could be, but then you're also competing against bigger companies like me. Indie does not mean indie the way we think of indie. Okay, there's like levels to this thing, right? Like there's indie me, I do everything and I have an editor. Then there's indie, we got a team, people share responsibilities, and we got a $500,000, $500,000 budget. Both of those are indie in this world, but they are very different. Indie. And she was like, they got a new category. Anna is DIY. You should try that. And I was like, very good. Thank you for that sage advice, my friend. And then that's the category we actually ended up winning. So I would say her advice was spot on. So I look at the award show in and of itself. I look at who they're actually marketing to as well and where their focus seems to be. And then I choose the category that I think is going to be best fit for that particular award show. That makes sense. So for the Ambies, it was DIY. I felt like that was a good place for us. I just started this pod in November 2021. So we're still a very much so a baby pod that has experienced a lot of really good things in a very short period of time. But when I go to like the Black Podcasting Awards, because the entry fee is lower, I'm like, yo, go all in here. Okay, LGBTQ news best. Yo, they got a host category. Let's go. Because it's really inexpensive, right? Then I look at the Communicator Awards. It's sort of in the middle of all of those. And we had a new pod this year. And I was like, you know what? I think this is the opportunity to give Black HIV an opportunity for more people to hear it. And let's see. And what's really special about that is that the people who worked on that pod hadn't won a podcast award before. And so then we all won together. And it was just this really great experience. And then we fit the bill and actually bought them their own awards. Now, I don't know if I'm going to ever do that again, child, because these awards is expensive, okay? So budget for that if you want your team to have an award, okay? But that's how I think about it. For example, the Webbies, no, not the Webbies, the Signal Awards, right? I wanted to apply, but they were really expensive. And I was like, I can't do it. Or the NAACP Image Awards. There's a lot of really great awards out here for you to apply to. And I just think about the context that my pod fits in the way that they are positioning that particular award show.
Ma'am, you said so many amazing things. I'm like, my brain is like, it's just rapid fire. Yes, you should be sorry for that. So I love what you said about concentrating on who you think the audience is going to be when you're creating the reel so that it really reaches the people that you think are going to be listening to it. I also want to highlight the fact that in 99.9% of award submissions, in the categories, there's actually a drop down that will give you a breakdown description of what that podcast award is. So I have experience being a judge on one particular podcast award show, and a lot of people were submitting their podcast for best education, when in fact, they were just schooling people on their opinions. when if they had taken the time and opportunity to look at the drop down, it was actually regarding podcasts for scholastic information. So K through 12, higher learning. So there were these people who had paid these foldable dollar bills to submit their podcast to this award that they didn't even fit into that category. So taking the time to actually research and have defined for you what that category actually is really important. And as Anna had said, the majority of these podcast award submissions cost money. Don't waste your money when you aren't even going to benefit from having your reel listened to because you don't fit into that category. So speaking of foldable dollar bills, awards run the gamut of, I have seen from $20 for like preliminary submissions to the Signal Awards, which was just that. Those were like $3 bills. I don't know what happens at the Signal Awards, but God bless, because I was like, "Ooh, that's too rich for my blood." So when you should be creating a budget for your podcast sometime in the body of the podcast. It should be when you first start your podcast. But if you haven't done that, take the time now to think about award season and what awards you want to submit to, and just start rolling that into your budget for podcast creation. Speaking of budget and podcast creation, so Dominic, podcast production, editing, storytelling, you write scripts, all of this, sound design, all of this plays a crucial role in not only you creating a reel, but your everyday in podcasting, as well as Anna. Do you feel, either one of you can jump in, do you feel that because you have the budget to retain people to assist you with these services, that your podcast is more apt to win an award? And what happens if it's a person is trying to submit that is a truly just solo person doing all of the things? How do you advise them to submit their reel, even though they can't compete with production and editing and storytelling, etc.?
No, that's a great question, because, when we won the Webby, our people in our category was ESPN, Slate, Lemonada. I'm pretty sure people are familiar with Lemonada, and our actual Travel Oregon. So I know they have like the budgets on budgets on budgets when I got like the budget of a Wendy's 4 for $4. So I know like, where I'm competing, right? But I think you just have to get creative, right? And maybe if you can do some of those things, like I do write my own scripts and sound design and stuff like that. But sometimes when I'm getting ready for award season, what I've been doing recently is, it's like, hey, my good friend Al Pete in Jacksonville, like, hey man, like I need you to tighten this up, because I know he's an audio engineer, right? And sometimes, and he obviously, I have to pay him and stuff like that, but maybe sometimes we can do some type of value exchange as well. So that way, maybe I don't have the $250 to make up his whole fee, but maybe I give him $150, and like maybe I can do some work for him on the side in order to make up that thing. So sometimes you have to get really creative when it comes to hiring out people and stuff like that. And then there's some times where, and I have to slap my hand for this, like I can just do it all myself and I ain't gonna pay nobody, right? I'm just gonna do it, and that's me. And sometimes it can bite you in the butt, you know what I mean? And especially when it comes to the TPAs, because the TPAs are really focused on the intricate details of these awards, and some of them, like the communicators world, they do focus on the skill level and stuff like that. It's not nearly as detailed as the TPAs or the Webbies or Third Coast or something along those lines, right? So I think it also matters like who you're submitting these entries to, because that can go along to like, should I hire somebody or should I not hire somebody? Can I get away with, maybe a few, hiccups here and there, or I know somebody at TPA like, nah, they're gonna ding me for this one, or the Signals for that matter. So I think it's a matter of your budget and what you were talking about as well. And if I could go back to something really quickly, when you're going through those categories and stuff like that to see where you submit, sometimes, don't just go for the category as far as like best blank show or best whatever. There's also sound design. There's also, writing. There's also other different subcategories that you can submit, in different award shows. So I just wanted to make sure I highlight that as well. And if you win one for writing, hey, it's still an award-winning show. So, it is what it is. And sometimes those fees may be a little bit cheaper than it's say for the one that's like podcaster of the year or something like that, depending on what you're submitting for. Just wanted to get that in there real quick, Bethany.
Thank you for adding that. And script writing is a whole genius. I have done it. It is exhausting. It is hoo chow. Anna, can you add a little bit more on what we were just discussing?
Yeah, as my wife needs to get in the house, my fault. Double, y'all, this is what happens when you work from home. Okay, I think she can get in the house. Okay. Yes. So for me, I say invest the money. Use that one reel for the whole year, like one reel for all submissions. If you've got a pod that you want to submit to multiple award shows, invest the $250 to $300 and get you a great reel to use. I don't know about y'all, but I am stacked to the brim when it comes to things I need to do. And I have a weekly podcast that needs to come out every Monday if I expect any of my business to work. And then I'm working on multiple other pods, not to mention, I'm a solopreneur. So when I think about this book that I absolutely adore called The Big Leap, and he talks about being in your zone of genius. And let me tell you, editing is not my zone of genius. Okay. That is not where I like to play. I can edit. When my editor takes a week off, I can jump in and I can do it. I don't like it. I do not like it. Okay. And when we talk about competing against some of these major networks and players out here in the space, you want to be able to put your best foot forward. And if editing and sound design is not your zone of genius, maybe it's your zone of excellence. Okay, that's great. But for this award show that you're about to spend a lot of money on investing, you want to put your best foot forward. So I say, put it in your budget as something that you're going to do if you plan on pursuing awards in general, and just get the reel done professionally and take the time it takes to get it done right.
Anna, Dominic, Bethany, can you just each three just quickly say how much do you actually budget per year for award season? If you're comfortable sharing a number, you can also ballpark it in a range if that feels more comfortable.
So I would say if you are planning on submitting to numerous awards, I would say 500, only because there are going to be particular numerous categories that you want to submit for each award, especially if you're just starting out. If you've had your podcast for, I would say 5 years or shorter, I would say 500.
I'm going to say it, not to be, whatever, but it varies. And the only reason I say that is because it depends on what my goals are for that year. So, for the first year when I started submitting for the awards, it's probably like maybe $500, because I know I want to know for the communicator awards, I know how much each entry fee is, and this, that, and the other. And so the next year it may be, maybe let's go to 750 because I want to throw some signal awards in there or whatever. And then maybe the next year is going to be different because I know Third Coast is coming up, I know Tribeca is coming up. And so it kind of varies depending on which type of award season, award show that I know the year before that I want to kind of compete in. So it varies.
Yeah, I was gonna say 1,000, just because there's some I'm just not gonna miss. I'm not gonna miss the Ambies. First off, to be nominated is such an incredible honor when we talk about the Ambies, and to then be at the show and be surrounded by people who value audio first. It's a mood. It's worth submitting to the Ambies, right? So there's the Black Podcasting Award, and then there's the Ambies that I will always submit to. But to Dominic's point, like, I'm also thinking about Tribeca. I'm also thinking about the NAACP Image Awards, right, for my audience. And these are expensive. I am thinking about the Signal Awards. I would love to apply, given the right budget, right? So it definitely varies. But I say 500, and I also say podcasting seriously because I have absolutely used that fund.
I was just going to mention that. So podcasting seriously, it actually allows BIPOC creators to being reimbursed up to, I think it's up to $500. Somebody drop that link in the chat, because I could be misquoting, but it's up to a certain amount of money for reimbursement for award submission as well as trainings. But since we're talking about award submissions, you can submit to Podcasting Seriously to be reimbursed for that. So if you had your budget of 500 and they reimburse up to 500, you could actually compound the 500 that you had initially invested to submit for other awards. And I just want to go back a little bit when we were talking about these higher production companies submitting reels. I do have to say, just because people are quote unquote well known does not mean that their reels are fire. And also, people who are quote unquote well known think that everybody knows who they are. Fun fact, I don't know a lot of sports people. So there were reels that I was listening to and they just kept saying their name over and over and over again. I was like, but even in the comments, I said, I don't know who you are. This means nothing to me. So even though you are going up against people who have higher production, doesn't mean that A, their podcast is very good, and B, their reel submission is very good. So I never want people to think, oh, I will never win, because the indies that are taking the time and the moment and the opportunity, those are the ones that are creating art with their reels. Just side note.
I'll co-sign to that. I honestly think the indie podcaster reels are just better in general. That's just me. Call me biased or whatever, but I think they're just generally better.
Speaking about the Ambies reel specifically, we did have a question in the chat that I think is very timely to what we're talking about. Is it says that the Ambies are requesting that you submit a full episode. They were wondering if that episode is going to be a compilation, like a long format reel, or if it literally is one episode.
If you have one episode that is the bomb.com, go to it. Be all about it. If there are people that are not only commenting on it, but sharing it and excitedly reaching out to you to say this impacted them on so many different levels, absolutely. But if you have a bunch of episodes that evoke feelings, I would say create just a longer soundbite. I, as a judge, don't know if I would be able to sit through, because entire episodes, those can run the gamut of 25 minutes to 3 hours. Like if Joe Budden submitted his podcast for the Ambies, that's like the Lord of the Rings movie. I can't handle that.
It's a marathon.
It is a marathon. So I would err on the side of caution and still keep it under, even though they say that you can submit it for an entire episode, I would still err on the side of caution and the judge's ears and have it 60 minutes or under.
Dominic, Anna, have you ever submitted what length have you submitted for the Ambies specifically?
I've submitted maybe a 25-minute episode, something that's like it at the very least is like even if the judge only listens to maybe the first 7 to 10 minutes, it should give you a general idea of what they're looking for and stuff like that. But I wouldn't, but also to go with what Bethany was saying as well, something that you feel like is the bomb.com. So like I've said that sweet spot, 25 minutes, and something that you feel like is your absolute best work.
My career news pods are already short. So now that we went weekly, we're at like 15, 20 minutes. So one of my episodes is really, I think, probably a perfect time frame for folks. I will say that I have cut my episode up to not play all of like my announcement stuff that only the people who listen to my pod every week care about. Like I typically don't submit my episodes with like my membership information that I do at the top of the show or stuff like that. I really just jump into the heart of the content. So I will say that it'll be an episode, but I do edit it a little for the submission of that episode.
Okay, so it sounds like both Dominic and Anna, it is an actual episode you're submitting for the Ambies, not a clipping. but Bethany says it is okay if you want to clip it and make it more like soundbite-esque. Both are good.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a situation where like maybe the episode is technically an hour, let's see if we can find a good solid 10 minutes and we just put that in there. So that way we're not taking up too much time, but at the same time we get the judge an idea of what they're looking for, or what you want them to look for at least.
I just want to give love to people who are judging the Ambies if they're listening to entire episodes, because truly and honorably, which I'm creating words now because I'm just in awe of of people submitting their entire episodes. It is, and 9 out of 10 times, judges are volunteers. We're doing it for literally the love of podcasting. And we're not just doing a quick little, here's a 1, here's a 2. We are offering commentary because we want every single person who submits their reels to get honest critique and feedback, because it's so important to us that you love what you do and that you do it the best that you possibly can. So for people who are doing the judging for the Ambies, I just want to give a little shout out and kudos and love. And if I could buy all of you the four for four that Dominic recently mentioned, I absolutely would. Get 4 Frosties. It's on me, but not really. So I know we only have 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we allocate enough time for Q&A. So my last question to you, Anna, is can you please provide 2 pieces of advice to someone who is submitting their podcast for an award?
Yes. Put together a fire reel. Probably outsource it unless editing is your zone of genius. That's 1. 2, submit to awards that you really want to win. Don't just submit to all these. There are so many award shows now in podcasting land. Every time I look up, there's another one. I'm like, who are they? Who are these people? What does this mean to me? Okay. Don't just do it to say you got an award-winning show. Like, submit to the ones that you really, really want to win.
I'll just say that, one, be mindful of the entry deadlines, if you will. So we know the TPAs, the early entry, deadline fee is this Friday. Take advantage of that, because, if we're talking about award and entry fees and they can be kind of pricey, let's take advantage of the early pricing, right? Get in early in that regard. And then I think the second thing I'll just say is that, like, understand that when you're submitting for awards, that it is an investment. And we kind of talked about that a little bit today, but just know that, like, I know a lot of people in podcasts, we're trying to get sponsorships. We're trying to get the bag, stuff like that. So this is one of those things where we can use these awards as leverage to get the bag, right? So it's like, it's one thing to say, hey, I'm an award winning or I'm an award nominated podcast XYZ. Sponsors care about that type of stuff. They look at that type of stuff because everybody want to attach themselves to a winner. And so just think about that before you think about, I don't know if I want an award. Let's make sure we kind of put ourselves in the best light to try to submit for those awards and think about the bag, I guess.
And I just want to add one more thing to that. The majority of award shows actually link their prior winners to their websites. Take a listen to the reel that they submitted if it's offered. See what that award-winning reel had. And then copy that formula to yours in that rhythm, in that cadence, because that is what caught the judge's ears. So you want to do the same. Second piece of information, you don't know if you are going to be the judge's first reel that they're listening to, or if they are literally the 300th reel that you're listening to. And can I talk about ear fatigue? That is a thing and a thing. So you want them to remember that your 250th reel was amazing. Because there is nothing like hearing a reel that is just so dope that you want to go out and listen to the podcast after you listen to 50 trash reels. And that is on whatever higher power you believe in.
Bethany, did you mention where we can actually listen to the reels? Are they posted on certain platforms or shared in certain spaces?
Usually they're actually on the website. So I don't know if Ambies actually does a link to the listening reels or just to the podcast. But take take the opinion of curiosity. Be curious. Who won that reel and why? And at the bare minimum, if they don't have the reel that you can listen to, reach out to that podcast and be like, hey, congratulations on winning best da 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 or storytelling da 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 da. Do you actually happen to have a copy of the reel? Because I'd love to listen to it. The worst that they can tell you is no. The best that can happen is you now have somebody in your corner that's won an award and they appreciate the fact that you're reaching out to them. So
That's
always be
super
curious.
supportive. Yes. Oh, I love that advice. I hope everyone heard that. Reach out. People love to have their egos fluffed a little bit and saying how amazing it is and congratulating. I think that's really, it's complimentary, right? You're sending good energy out there. I know Bethany is really big on love bombing people, and that's her phrase. So you can also love bomb them on LinkedIn, Instagram, drop some love. Make sure we are amplifying each other's voices too. If there is a podcast you love, review that podcast, actually love up on these people who are putting in so much time, energy. So I know as podcasters, how much it means when we get reviews. Just try to spread that love. All right, I know we have 10 minutes left. So I have a couple rapid fire from the chat, and Bethany, then we'll have some space, hopefully, if there's anything else you want to cover. But quick question for a narrative fiction podcast, would the intro be as a character or as themselves? Bethany, what do you think?
I would love to have the author introduce the storyline.
Okay.
And then bring in that soundbite. Because once you give me a preview of what the heck is going on, then I'm hooked. So that's how I would like to listen to the reel.
Awesome. Okay, so if it's a 5-minute time clip and we're submitting 4 minutes and 59 seconds, right, y'all? If that's what we're doing, how long should each soundbite be? I had the question, should it be 3 to 4 longer sound bites or 10 to 15 super short?
For me, it depends. It depends on the cadence, the rhythm, the information that's being provided. That is something that I would never say, okay, this is the time limit. This is the time limit. This is the time limit, because it could vary so much. Anna, what do you think?
You said all the things. There's nothing else to say. Everything Bethany said is right.
Dominic, I think you came off mute for a second too.
Yeah, no, kind of highlight what Bethany said. I know in the past I've done where like I've done like maybe 90 seconds, like 2 90-second clips from shows, and then like use in between pieces to set up both of those clips. So to Bethany's point, I'm setting up, giving the judge some context, so that way we're not going straight into the content and you don't know what's going on, what's the setup, what's the background, why should I care about this character, why should I care about this content, and so it's doing that setup, if you will. So like you said, everything Bethany just said.
Love it. Or another super short question. Short question is, while I'm eating my words, is there crackers in my soup? Can you qualify for interviews category if you just occasionally do an interview? If 90% of the episodes are interviews, but not all, like how do you think that's fair or that works, you guys?
It depends on what category you are submitting to. So if you're
category, for that category, but not every episode is an interview.
So if it's an interview category, you want to choose sound bites where you're actually interviewing somebody. Just like if it is a best co-host award, you want to put in both of the co-hosts speaking. Don't throw in a guest soundbite in a best co-host reel. Escusi? What is happening? Why is there only one person talking? And that's why I say you have to look at the description. You have to see the breakdown of what award you're submitting to, because if it is solely on interview style, you're going to want to choose sound bites in which you're actually interviewing a guest or whomever onto your podcast.
So they would be interviewing some person, we'll just say, and that I'll get a little bit of soundbite from their responses to and me, two people.
Correct.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like if you
Ooh,
do
Dominic, you wanted to jump in?
Oh no, I was just gonna like chime in again because to your point, well, I'll just say this. Listen, like if you're submitting a reel or something like that, and 90% of your episodes are interview, like we're not gonna go back as a judge. I'm not gonna go back and listen to any other episodes. I'm gonna judge what's right there. So you can like tell me that 40% of it is interview and the rest of it, I wouldn't know, right? So like I guess what I'm saying, don't overthink it.
Love that. We always overthink, and we got a little bit of imposter syndrome going. I know that was a question, but I feel like we've kind of gotten into that a bit about these big bad, guys from ESPN might not be so fire. So don't forget, if you're indie, if you're doing it and you're hustling, even if you only have a couple thousand, you're new, or just try. It feels really good, and it's a really great learning process to put together a reel too, which I think everyone here can speak to. Super quick question. This one I guess would be targeted most for Bethany as a judge. Do you know, are we able to go back and edit our submissions after we've actually submitted them?
That is a sticky situation. And the reason why I say that is because I know somebody who actually submitted the reel and then they wanted to resubmit a different reel, and the former reel stayed on there like barnacles on a ship, and it didn't upload the new one. So make sure that whatever you are submitting is the one that you want heard, because there isn't a guarantee that the correct one or the newer one is going to be uploaded appropriately.
All right. And if you're entering multiple categories, do you, and just for the Ambies, we'll say, or just for the signal, just one thing, do you create different sound bites and different reels for each category?
It depends on what you're submitting for. Like as Anna had said, she creates one reel and then submits them submits them to the particular categories. But if that reel didn't pertain to that category, she would most likely either create another reel or just not submit. I cannot emphasize this, and I know I'm like beating a dead horse, and I apologize. but looking at
How about you're just petting the same puppy over and over again? Because like we don't need to beat anything. Like, everything should be alive here.
I'm like petting like the cat from like Austin Powers. Like,
love it.
Like looking at the category and the description and making sure that your reel aligns with that, because you can be kicked out of a category quicker than an analogy that I can't even think of, because it didn't follow the guidelines of the description and the category. You have to do your due diligence in checking to make sure that it falls into whatever you're submitting for. Or else you can just send me the money, because you're just wasting your money. So I will give you my Venmo.
That's good. Okay, last one. I know Anna Deshawn actually typed this into the chat a little while ago. What's the difference between a reel and a trailer?
Wait, Anna, did you ask that question, or did you want to answer that question?
I was asking the question because I think that they can be seen as the same thing. And in some cases they might be able to work, but I think I was saying it early on, you've kind of told why and how they could be different. But I just thought it was a great question, and they had asked for questions, so I just wrote one in.
I'm glad you did. That was awesome.
Anna Deshawn asked the best questions, and that's why I love her. I would drink her bathwater. So there is.
Remember what we said about love bombs, everybody. This is Bethany in a nutshell. Not a love.
It's nothing that I haven't said to Anna before. So I'm very creepy. So trailers and reels, they can be one and the same. However, a trailer is an overview of what your podcast is about. A reel is very specific to, again, that category in which you are submitting for that award. And some of the times, if you're working on a trailer and you want to submit for an interview, best interview, some of the times that interview piece is not going to be in the trailer. Some of the times trailers can absolutely win in the submission. Some of the times it just doesn't fit into the category.
Awesome. Well, y'all, we are almost at time here. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone for being here and to Bethany, Anna, and Dominic for sharing their wisdom, time, expertise, and experience with all of us. I know Amanda's going to do some housekeeping, but I would request if you could just stick on here for just a minute or two more after she ends the recording. We would love to take a screenshot if everyone would be willing to turn on their cameras after she clicks stop recording. So just hold on. Would love to, we'll all share it on LinkedIn. We'll share it, on Instagram, and it'd be fun. So just try to turn your cameras on if you don't mind.
Lily, also, I would love to know what everybody's favorite takeaway was. So if you want to put it on Instagram, if you want to tag Anna, if you want to tag me, if you want to tag Dominic, if you want to tag the Podcast Academy, that would be so great on your favorite takeaway and what you're really going to be implementing before you submit that reel.
Oh my gosh, Bethany, you're doing my job for me. I love everything about this. I want to thank everybody for being here. Check the chat. We want to hear your feedback. But again, everybody's socials are there. We will go back on Slack and post people's social media links as well there if you want to follow them. And definitely please do tag TPA. I'm going to thank everybody for tuning in and watching this from home if you are. And the recording shall end this.